Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Down the Donut Hole podcast. And today, of course, some more nervous news. And maybe later, we'll talk about the very deep history of equality.
Ooh, that would be good. I thought equality was a far-off principle that we could only hope for. I guess probably not. Do you have some good stuff for us?
I think, we were discussing this a little bit last night and this morning too. But yeah, it's really quite amazing when you do go down the deep history of something so basic to humanity as equality. So
we thought it was basic, but it isn't basic. It's not basic.
Just as an additional tease, the number of years that human beings have been equal and have understood and respected each other is far, and I mean really far longer than what we've suffered since.
I will like to explore that a little bit.
You know more about it than I do, really.
Well, maybe I do, maybe I don't. And I'll confess I know a little bit about it, and I like what I hear. I noticed in the nervous news that the House on Tuesday defeated an effort that would have effectively killed a push to allow new parents to vote remotely around the birth of their child. And the Republicans and Mike Johnson and all of that crowd are not liking that whole thing, that there was some dissension among Republicans. And there were three, I think, who stood up, Republican women who stood up with the whole of the Democratic body and said, yeah, we need that. And yesterday we mentioned this a little bit, and this is a nod to what real life requires of people. And if these representatives have to travel to Washington or hang around in Washington waiting to sit there and cast a vote, which sometimes I notice that stuff a lot of the time takes place quite late at night. And if you've got a new baby or you're expecting a baby or your wife has had a baby, that just is a very poor use of your time, and it cannot be seen as a priority. In this proxy voting, from what I understand, is I don't know that they have a remote way of allowing that, whether they can do it by conference call. And I mean, come on, there are certainly secure channels that you can cast your vote. I'm sure they can muster that together. But
somebody's face on the video probably would be enough.
Well, I don't know. Everybody's scared of deep fakes and all this other stuff now. But they're saying that they have, in the past, I believe, been able to give their vote, their ballot, to a trusted colleague to cast that ballot for them. And I think in situations where you have a lot of responsibility right at home, or you're sick yourself or something like that, having that as an option for someone to deliver your ballot for you, it seems to me it makes sense. It seems to me that that would be a much less expensive way to cast these votes and keep the burden of doing the work of the people to a minimum. And now with the government efficiency quotas and, all of this initiative, it would seem like that would be a way more efficient way of handling the whole process of voting and the inconvenience of that, if that's the only thing that's going to be taken up in a session or something. And I do think that disproportionately that, killing the ability to do a proxy vote would disproportionately bother the females that are in Congress. And I do know that there have only been 64 total have served women. 64 total women have served in the U.S. Senate. Only 64. And currently there's 26. And the Republican females number 33, I guess. 16. Well, now it's 16 Democrats and 10 Republican women.
So that's of all time?
64 of all time. Does that strike you the way it strikes me?
Yeah, exactly.
Does it strike you like that doesn't feel like fair representation?
I wouldn't say so, no.
And now, if they're trying to kill proxy vote, which disproportionately affects the female members of the legislative body, does that not seem like it's just another DEI dump?
Absolutely. No question about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another good way to control the outcome of something. Change the rules.
I saw a word that made me laugh. There was some article, and I didn't have a chance to read it, but the banner on it was about the gerontocracy in the United States. The gerontocracy. And of course, the idea of gerontocracy wraps up the great age of most of the representatives in there, but at least the ones in the big power positions. But I don't think it quite reflects the fact that they are also mostly males. So old men. We have a council of old men who are used to doing things a different way in a different reality than what the young men have. Because I have noticed that younger men are beginning to step up in great numbers and not consider themselves babysitters of their own children. They're parenting those children. They're taking greater responsibility with that and with the things that need to happen, in the running of a household and, just having that aspect of your life be incorporated into a whole person approach to how you proceed. So I think that's interesting. But that gerontocracy, isn't that a great word?
Yeah, I wouldn't, just by itself, you wouldn't really know what it means. I think maybe that it excludes people with the first name of Gerald or something.
No,
I don't know.
It's like geriatric care,
yeah, okay, gotcha.
So that sort of thing. When we were talking about the influence of the Iroquois Confederacy on the Constitution of the United States, as well, and also, I should say, the influence of the Magna Carta on our Constitution, which we talked yesterday, is really a contract among states. And when it was acceded to by 9 states, 9 of the colonies, originally, it was enough to pass. So I think that considering it as a contract and understanding that the beauty of it is in consent of the governed. But I think we have to take a breather and say, is it still working for everybody? And especially since we've gotten this your team versus my team idea of what the role of the political parties are. I was going to ask you, have you noticed that it's more like hockey teams or football teams and your allegiance is to that team no matter what, and you can't see your way clear to work with the other side or consider the other side's initiatives valid?
We're going to kill them. Next time we meet, we're going to kill them.
Yeah,
we're going to squish them. We're going to, all these other
all
words.
All of those violent words used in a sporting context. Well, it does seem like, certainly for us here at the I can't even say it.
That's because you had too many donuts, I think.
I know I didn't. I wished I did.
Yeah.
But balance is the key. Down the Donut Hole podcast is all about trying to look at things in a balanced way, trying to step back from the partisan politics a little bit, break it back down to the very basic concept of what we're talking about and try to achieve balance. When we were talking about the Iroquois Confederacy, I noticed that there was a very strong approach toward balance between males and females, between the tribes themselves. I read subsequently that when that was first being talked about as banding together to stop infighting and warring against each other. There was a beautiful illustration of what it would mean to agree to work together and respect each other. And there is a story that the great Peacemaker came and he took one arrow and easily snapped it in two. And he said, this is what each of us is on our own. Then he bundled 5 arrows together, bundled them up, and then made that same gesture to attempt to break the 5 bundled arrows, and he could not do it. Oh. And I think that was a beautiful illustration, the meaning of which could not be mistaken. And so that Confederacy, that idea of stronger together, is very.
That'd be the origin of Together We Stand, perhaps.
I think that probably goes back a lot further than that. Anytime there had to be an alliance,
just makes sense.
It does make sense. But I thought that was a beautiful way of hammering that home just visually. And when we were talking, we said that it was the females of the tribes who vetted the candidates for chief of each of the tribes. This was done for each of the original 5 tribes, and then the Tuscaroras as the 6th of the Iroquois Confederacy. And they vetted those candidates for chief, and they were able to say whether they thought this person would be able to carry out the job.
That's interesting. So it's okay in their culture for a male to be the chief, quote unquote, but the only people voting are women. Interesting.
Yes. They're approving it because it was a hereditary thing. And I love that, because I think that that's a beautiful way to make sure that all the voices are heard. And she was known as the Mother of Nations. And the whole concept, I know when we talk about Native American lore, when you think about anything like that, the concept of Mother Earth. And I do know that what was considered right for women, the rearing of children, the raising of crops, the 3 sisters, the corn, beans, squash, the domestication of animals, language, teaching the symbolic language, because not every language was written out. It wasn't like cursive writing or any of that. A lot of it was being able to recognize symbols for what they meant. All of that was the province of women, that, and especially child rearing. And I think once your investment in the well-being of your tribe is something that you're very hands-on about every single day, I think that you have a very large stake in seeing to it that things are not going to go awry with the election of a leader who isn't tuned in with what the real needs, the real practical, human, personal needs of your collective is. And I think that it just makes a lot of sense to me.
Oh, absolutely.
I was proud of those Republican women that stood up to continue that and have the spine, because I know that they're going to face backlash. I know that this isn't something that's going to be overlooked, and they'll be considered, not team players at the best, and possibly traitors against the Republican machine for having stood up for that. But I commend you. And I know that we have seen a lot that it is the female members to a high degree who have stuck their neck out on a lot of issues that are unpopular, party-wise. Not unpopular for their constituents, because they see what's needed back home where it's going to be felt. I know in Alaska, I know in Maine, I know in some of the other border states, the tariffs are going to affect the citizens of those northern states horribly. It just will, because they do the most casual commerce cross-border. And so, because a lot of the representatives of those states happen to be female, they have done a wonderful job of really looking at what that's going to play out to look like in their own backyard.
So that was representatives from 2 states?
2 Republican women stood up.
Okay.
And actually, Rand Paul stood up, and so did Mitch McConnell, because they said, because Kentucky is a bourbon producer and a worldwide exporter, and now that everybody's mad at us, even in Canada, our old buddies, that this is going to very negatively affect sales of Kentucky bourbon. And that is something we should all be concerned about.
If I'm not mistaken, actually, they might not have thought this through very well. That's common now, I guess.
Well,
but the fact that the Kentucky bourbon needs, I believe I'm correct on this, that they need wine barrels from France.
Oh, yeah.
So
the sherry barrels.
I think they didn't think about that, maybe.
Well, I think it works both ways, because I think they get sherry barrels from France to age the whiskey in. And I think France imports some of the Kentucky oak whiskey barrels to age some of their brews over there.
Yeah.
And so, gosh, is this something we really wanted to happen? We need to hold the phone. Let's figure out what's going to happen with all of this.
I think that was the name of one of my old girlfriends, actually.
What?
Sherry Barrels.
Oh, I'm sorry I never met her. I'll bet she was a fun girl. So they at least preserved the ability to have a proxy vote around the time of birth. I think it should continue. I think you should get a number of tickets that you can spend on using as a proxy. I think every representative should have a number of tickets so that you don't have to head on into Washington to attend some vote. And when you have other things back home in your own backyard where you could be listening, you could be seeing what things really are like on the ground where you are from, and from the perspective of the people you represent.
Like I was saying, a 2-way video feed.
Yeah.
Secure, of course.
But see, that smacks a lot of work from home, and they're not loving that. I mean, they've called everybody back to offices, and most of the public who has been working from home since 2020, since the pandemic, people are saying that they really like it. It worked for them. There were things that they could prioritize their day so that they would take a video meeting, and then if there was follow-up, they could do that follow-up over the course of the next few hours, taking little gaps to kind of keep things going. It, in many cases, reduced child care costs for the younger members, or elder care costs because you were around and maybe grandma or grandpa needs some extra presence. And so that was working for people. Commuting costs, wear and tear on your car, just it was working for people. But they're insisting that people come back because they're saying that they're lacking a team spirit, or the real reason. I think most people understand the real reason is that they have all these hulking buildings that now nobody's using. They're falling to rack and ruin, and until they figure out what to do with them, they want bodies in chairs. But with all of these cuts, I know now they're talking about getting rid of a lot of real estate. And have we taken enough time?
Low-cost housing, maybe?
Yeah. That'd be good.
Yeah,
we could solve, if we did that, like, let's get on that. If you send the people back home to work from home, that saves all the maintenance costs on the buildings, all the weather, the climate controls, and let them go back home and work. You want them gone. You brought them back to the office, and then you canned huge percentages of the workforce. But you want the other ones to come and sit in a big old lonely office, or are we going to consolidate offices? Are we going to overcrowd them? It just doesn't seem like there's been enough planning and careful thought. It seems like the call for action has been taken perhaps too zealously. And I appreciate the fact that people are saying, we've had a lot of administrations where they tell us they've done good things, but we're not seeing it or feeling it. And this, we're being told, well, hey, here's a lot of action for you, and it's going to hurt and sting for a while, but you'll see, this is going to make America great again. But I think increasingly, people are losing confidence in that promise, because I think that our government perhaps has overestimated people's ability to ride out the rough weather, to ride out the lean times.
Well, they can, but a rest period in between is always nice. You go from struggling to, oh, by the way, we're the new guys in town, but you have to struggle some more.
Yeah, I don't know.
And working remotely is a very efficient way. Saves energy, saves money, that's kind of thing. I think Des is working remotely.
I think he is. I think I hear him, to tell you the truth. Good morning, Des.
Good morning.
Are you working on?
Sorry, I'm late.
Are you working on paperwork today?
Oh, that's okay. A lot of people are ordering
Tried to
stuff.
sneak in.
You can't get by us. You got to get up pretty early in the morning to fool this old girl.
I have to get up before lunch.
For lunch.
Yeah.
And, that makes it hard
Before
for you.
lunch,
You got one of my kids, when they were little, if they slept in late, they said, it really makes it hard for me, Mom, because I have to eat my breakfast and then I have to hurry up and eat my lunch. I said, why don't you just kind of eat one meal that serves for both? But that was a little kid growing like crazy and hungry all the time.
There's a word for that, brunch.
You ever get tired thinking about what you had to do today?
Oh God, yeah.
Me too. Me too. This time of year, I love the spring. I love all the green and all of that. But, oh, boy, is there a lot of trimming and outdoor work that needs to be done. And for some reason, where we live, a lot of stuff has prickers. And it goes through the glove, and you're standing there, and you're thinking, oh, brother. I pulled something this morning. I was out working for a while, and this little white plant.
Sure, rub it in.
2 or 3 inch high plant. Cutest little thing. It almost looked like a little edelweiss. It isn't edelweiss, but it looked kind of like that. I pulled that, and the thing was absolutely loaded with needles. I didn't have my glasses on. I can't wear my glasses when I'm out trimming because they fog up, which was the same problem I used to have when we were wearing the face masks during the pandemic. And so that was a very unpleasant surprise. And I thought, it's not very nice, because here I was thinking it was all so cute, and it wasn't. So anyway, that.
Sorry, I didn't mean, I guess we just took a little commercial break or something. Sorry. Sorry. I didn't want to interrupt.
That's okay. We were talking yesterday a little bit, and a little bit again today, about the matrilineal or matrifocal aspect of government in past times, and
which is that
certainly with
deep
Native
history
Americans.
of equality we talked about at the head of the show.
Well, I think this proxy vote thing shows that there's a perspective here that isn't being given enough respect, and there's a very grave lack of balance in our legislature and in our perspective generally. DEI was meant to some level to address that, and that being ripped away, this proxy vote being ripped away, the antagonism toward the female representatives especially, who stand up and say, no, that's not good for my state.
It's the one bad apple problem.
And what do you mean? Explain.
A good cause even, or a good idea or a good policy can be destroyed if there's one bad apple.
And
But one bad apple, as the Osmonds famously said, don't spoil the whole bunch. So if you have somebody abusing the work from home or abusing or someone, making money off a social justice movement, it shouldn't negate the good stuff. I mean, it's one bad apple. Or two, depending on.
well, I think generally, the data showed that it was working very, very well for the employees and that their productivity was actually higher than it was. And I think they're spreading the workload out into more convenient pockets. And I think just based on the young ones, especially that I've watched work from home, they're working, I believe, longer hours, but it doesn't seem that way because it's not crammed into an 8-hour day and then the clock dings and out they go. But it's done in efficient little pockets. And so I think the net gain is greater in terms of hours worked, even though they're being paid for 8, let's say, or whatever they're being paid for.
I'm not a fan of work from home anymore.
Why?
Because you're a delivery.
Yeah, it doesn't work. From home, it doesn't work. No, but when I was working in LA, some days I was the only one in the office because I didn't have kids. So they were letting everyone who had kids work from home. So I was there by myself, basically in the office, and it made the work I had to do difficult.
Because you couldn't hand it back and forth to another team
and
over in the other
there was no accountability from our office manager on keeping tabs on what everybody was doing. So,
well, you didn't have anybody looking over your shoulder, at least, right? That helps a little bit.
I had nobody to talk to either. So, and then there was also this girl that I dated. She worked from home, and she would get up, watch YouTube, have coffee, answer 2 emails, have a online meeting. Then she would go to the gym for an hour, come back, answer 2 more emails. Then she would go grocery shopping for 3 hours, maybe go to Target, buy some clothes, then come back, answer 2 more emails, and maybe have another meeting. And then she would make dinner and watch YouTube while she watched her emails too. So I would have fired her.
Sounds like a sweet deal.
Oh yeah, she still works there as far as I know.
That's 6 or 8 emails that she responded to. That's a couple of meetings that she did. And she kept an eye on it. So if anything came in from West Coast or wherever, off time, she kept an eye on that, probably answered those. And at the end of the day, she did get stuff done.
Yeah.
Would you pay somebody to answer 6 emails, pay them for a full day's work? I wouldn't. She was hardly even working from home. She was always like in her car answering stuff on her phone. Oh. It got to see how that worked really was frustrating because she was the bad apple.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Well, let's say it isn't just the work from home employees who abuse the system. I've worked in places where you have middle managers who are out to lunch all the time. And I don't mean sales lunches either. I just mean out to lunch. And
out to lunch is right.
To be fair, there are jobs that you're sort of being paid to be on standby. I can say that as an engineer, where you're not doing a bunch, but you are being paid to be available quickly.
Yeah, and then there are other jobs where all you do is have meetings all day. Yes. I work for a major studio, and that's we had tons of work. You were on call all the time, and they call you in the middle of the night or email you or whatever with an issue.
That is one thing, that the lines between official work hours and home hours are very, very blurry with work from home. Some people enjoy getting dressed up, leaving the house where they're looking around and there's a million little chores that need to be done, or the kids or the dog, and they're tugging on your shirt sleeves to come go do this or go do that, or hey mommy, look at this. That can be difficult.
But if somebody's paying me, I should go where they tell me to go. Like if they're saying I need to come into the office to get paid, then I have to come in. I don't have a choice.
That's right.
I'm not. What am I going to do? Oh, they'll just find somebody else to replace me. So
That's right.
it's like who if you've been a business owner, who runs your company.
Right.
I don't know.
Plus, it's striking a balance and all of that. And when we're talking about the balance of a viewpoint or a perspective, and women today still do the lion's share of the child rearing, the household chores. It's getting better. I do not deny that. It is getting better. But part of the reason it's getting better is it is being talked about. And also, because I think this work from home perspective, if mom and dad are both working from home, he gets to see it. He's immersed in it. He didn't, go out the door at 7 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning and come back in just in time for supper. He's seen the progression. He hears the kids. He has a much greater sense of the demands of that job, of the family job.
Freedom without structure is chaos.
It's very much, and without good leadership. Now, when we were talking about matrifocal leadership in these early cultures, for a long time, the archaeologists found absolute evidence that those were goddess-oriented cultures. They were Mother Earth cultures. And in those cultures, as far as I understand, it wasn't that they were throwing their weight around. And if you look at the goddess statues, these are voluptuous statues.
A lot of them are, that's right. Mm-hmm.
Very voluptuous. But it isn't that they're being domineering. Those cultures, from what I understand from a lot of the reading, were very egalitarian.
Yes. All the evidence points to that. And no war, actually. There's no record of war before 10,000 BC, I think, something like that.
Or starvation.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
That resource was distributed in a proper egalitarian way. And also, did I read correctly that they had more leisure time than we do in a lot of these?
Yes, well, that's a common misconception, apparently, based on a lot of archaeological and paleontological research, that the idea would be, especially in terms of like the hunter-gatherer cultures, that they'd be out there, and they probably were during daylight hours, a lot of the hours. But evidence is contrary to that. Apparently, there's some good books and some research papers about that. How they were able to actually sustain themselves with about 3 or 4 hours of work, which left them with a lot of free time. And of course, in the evening, a beautiful show in the sky. And that's how they started to really become experts, as we infer by some of the archaeological remains.
You can have too much leisure time where you just waste it and you think you're doing something, but you're really not.
Well,
I think they took care of their essential survival needs, and then they took other time to somehow record. They had the foresight to record history and what they were, to convey.
To be artistic. To be artistic and so much development, the language, writing, the understanding
podcasts.
Of plants, the understanding of plants as medicine, all of these wonderful things, those were developed by women. But we never heard that in school. How about you, Des? You're younger than us. Did you hear that?
That's a good question.
Did you ever hear that this is the province of women?
No.
Mm-hmm.
It was always men. But again,
but it's not an old tradition, like we teased at the beginning of the show. It's a very short period of time versus the deep history of equality.
Okay, so when did it shift from these
another way to put it,
matrifocal cultures, mother-focused.
What?
Mother-focused cultures.
Sorry.
That's probably a better word than goddess.
My ears aren't awake.
People don't want to hear anything that challenges the idea of a spiritual focus that is not on a father sky god, but would include a balancing female perspective in all of that.
Yeah, and anything that threatens your power, why would you promote that?
Exactly.
That makes no sense. And also, if you can't make money off of something, why would spirituality is free? Why would you give that away? You can't make money off something holistic.
Yeah, but if you can blur the lines between a political ideology and a spiritual focus, then you get that all wrapped up into one thing. And it's really hard to untangle that and see your way clear to, hey, does this feel right? Does this feel like it's measuring up to what I understood were the tenets of my religious focus, my spiritual aspirations? And it becomes so muddied that it's hard to separate it out. And I think that nowadays we, here in the United States, certainly, we are identifying more and more as a Christian country, when this country, if we remember, was founded with an idea of freedom from religion. And it wasn't because we were rejecting the tenets of Christianity, but I think we were projecting the concept of, this is working for us now, this is who we are now, but what if something shifts and it becomes a different religion?
I think the way I like to use my favorite word along those lines is dogma. And so religion minus the dogmatic part, I think that's probably, if you boil that down a little bit more.
So spirituality.
Exactly. But another way that people describe this concept is the patriarchy versus the matriarchy.
Why should it be versus? Why can't it be both? Why can't we
versus,
have
I guess,
a balance?
in the sense of conceptually, or the ideology?
Yeah, well, just like we just spoke about, the matriarchy has existed a lot longer, and it worked for everybody. And they were just going by common sense. It just makes sense for males and females to work side by side and together and equal, and to be fair.
To have balance. And I think something as little as allowing new parents, and we didn't say just new mommies, we said new mommies and daddies, because the daddies are very important support structure in those early months when nobody's getting any sleep. Just the practical things. Somebody's got to go to the store, and it isn't going to be mommy at this moment because she's got her hands full with a crabby baby.
And just to put some numbers to it, they figure the patriarchy came into being only about 3,500 or so years ago. But the evidence of the matriarchal cultures is at least 50 to 60,000 years versus 3,500.
I did not hear that in any history course I took in school. I'm not sure why that is. I do know that a lot of archaeologists are supported by institutions of higher learning, and their funding comes from those institutions. And whatever the perspective of the previous research that institution has sponsored, that an archaeological find has to be made to conform to that continuum. And so I think that's probably the reason, but does it serve us well as human beings to understand or to cut that off or diminish that or ignore that or anything along those lines?
Well,
I don't think so.
Ignorance is bliss. It's like knowing there's other.
It's bliss. Well, it's bliss.
Yeah.
But you kind of
until you realize that it's not. And
that you've been lied to.
Yeah.
I want to take a second when we talk about female egalitarian societies. I just want to say, Mackenzie Scott, Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, Melinda Gates, so many of the other female philanthropists have donated so much money. I know Mackenzie Scott donated, get this guys, $6 billion in 2020.
Wow.
And she donated that to over 300 different agencies. Her team researched those agencies. They vetted them to make sure that that money would go to a good cause and it was going to be used in the way that it was intended or that it was donated for. They gave to the United Way. They gave to, Mackenzie gave to United Way, Easter Seals, Goodwills. They gave to rural places that they escape the notice of other donors. Cities can see these community efforts that do a great deal of good, and they have many more potential donors because people see it. It's in their vision, you know. But in these rural places, Alaska, you know, the Midwest, rural communities in the Midwest, those places don't have the big donors lining up to put money. But she has done that. Melinda Gates has done that. And they say that the donations of those women and their associates has so far outstripped the donations of the 1% male population that it's just eye-opening.
And true charity is often unappreciated and unknown.
Yeah. It absolutely is unknown. And that's the thing. The old adage is that if you give and make a show of giving, that's
just
you've had your reward.
Self-promotion.
Well, this was an award.
Yeah.
She didn't put this out. This was an award that she was given, and
I guess that's what
a lot
people
of
don't necessarily know.
No, they
about
don't.
that.
And that's I think, a really important thing to say. And I will say this. Some of the recipients of very large donations, especially from Mackenzie Scott, they didn't even know that they were under consideration. They had put out the word that they needed funding for this or for that. They never knew that their organization was on her radar until they received that check. And the checks, they vetted them. They delivered those checks in very short order. They didn't let the slow plodding process from the ask to the reception, they didn't let that drag out because they know that the need is great right now. And now, with all of these funding cuts, I'm looking for everybody to step up.
It makes you wonder what the world would look like without charity.
Oh, well, I think charity donations from philanthropists is going to have to plug an awful lot of holes. And anybody that can do any good at all in your own community, if you see that there's a shortfall due to some government cut or a delay, or you see groups of people whose jobs have been wholesale tossed into the trash compactor, help out, step up. If you've got a food pantry in town, donate. And don't take anything unless you absolutely need it, because there is a great deal of need out there, and I think as individuals we need to help strike that balance. That's what we're about. Now today, talking about Mackenzie Scott's donations, that's our blessing for today to talk about. That's our relief from the nervous news, because it is growing more and more intense. Try to seek balance. Try to take a step back and cool yourself down. We're in our last couple of seconds, and as always,
we got to continue this discussion though about the deep history.
Well, tomorrow is tomorrow Freaky Friday, or
I think it is. Yeah.
Okay, then we'll take a Freaky Friday break, and then Monday we'll be back and we'll pick this topic up, because I agree with you. I think there's a lot more that we can talk about in terms of
there is,
achieving
including
balance.
some mind-blowing facts
Wow.
that people probably have never heard before.
How mind-blowing.
That's all I'm going to say for now.
Ooh, wow, that's kind of a cliffhanger. Now tomorrow, with whatever Freaky Friday topic we come up with, people might be disappointed. Certainly us girls, we want to know, is there going to be a little bit better footing for us?
Need to know.
Need to know? I'd like to know. Have a great day. Go do something fun. Bye for now. down.